It started with a simple move to a new house. Lindsay and her husband Flint had no idea their quiet life was about to spiral into a wild, unbelievable discovery. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like and share this video. At first, everything seemed ordinary. Fresh paint, new keys, unopened boxes. But then, while cleaning out the scullery, something strange caught Lindsay's attention. Beneath an old cupboard that the previous owners had oddly left behind, along with the carpet under it, they noticed a dull metallic clink every time they stepped on the floor. Curious, Lindsay and Flint slid the cupboard aside, revealing a solid metal hatch embedded into the tiles. Her skin prickled. Why would someone go to such lengths to hide this? The hatch had no markings, no handle, just cold metal and the whisper of something secret below. Flint pried it open, revealing a narrow shaft descending into pitch blackness. A rusty ladder, barely hanging on, ran down the wall, but the bottom was invisible in the shadows. It was at least 30 meters deep, far too deep for a cellar. Lindsay's instincts screamed at her to leave it alone, but Flint was already strapping on gloves. "We have to know what's down there," he said. With Lindsay watching from above, Flint began to descend. The ladder groaned under his weight, echoing ominously. Once at the bottom, he called for Lindsay to toss him a flashlight. When the beam cut through the dust-choked air, it revealed a tunnel, long, narrow, and ancient. Concrete and steel lined the walls, and an old cable ran along the ceiling, suggesting electricity had once flowed through this underground passage. The idea of it being just a storage bunker quickly faded. Flint pressed on as Lindsay called her brother Carl, who arrived minutes later, equally intrigued. Above ground, they followed Flint's path, communicating via walkie-talkie as he moved deeper into the unknown. Then Lindsay saw something, a piece of concrete poking up through the grass at the garden's edge. She dropped to her knees and began digging. Carl joined her, and soon a second entrance was exposed. Flint's voice crackled through the radio. "I see light! That's you above me!" The trio converged. Flint pushed open a massive iron door and entered the bunker's core. Inside was something out of time, shelves of vintage magazines, jars labeled whiskey and rum from the 1940s, and military equipment covered in decades of dust. In one locked case, Lindsay found documents, real military documents, describing Allied submarine movements from 1945. If they had fallen into enemy hands back then, the course of the war might have changed. As they pushed deeper, they found perfectly preserved uniforms, weapon holsters, maps, and more. This wasn't just a bunker, it was a museum buried in time. They decided to preserve it properly and called in a neighbor who owned a construction company. Excavations revealed even more. At the far edge of the garden stood an observation tower, complete with untouched equipment, war logs, and even an anti-aircraft gun. The couple's vision quickly grew. They wanted to turn the bunker into a real museum, something that could educate the public and honor the past. With the help of Carl and their new neighbor, they restored the entrance, reinforced the tunnels, and began carefully cataloging everything. Weeks later, the museum opened, and people came from all over. Reviews poured in, praising the attention to detail and the uniqueness of the find. But the excitement didn't last. One morning, Lindsay walked into the museum and immediately knew something was wrong. Several historical items were missing: documents, bottles, equipment. The museum had been robbed. Worse still, the place wasn't insured. Panic set in as they called the police. The officers began their investigation, but leads were scarce. Then Lindsay remembered the guest book. She and Carl reviewed it together. One group stood out: visitors who had seemed overly interested in specific items. Carl retraced the tour route he'd taken them on. As they looked for clues, Lindsay spotted something odd: a gap in the stone wall. She pushed against it and discovered a hidden passage. What they found chilled them. The hidden passage led outside, far from the museum's main entrance. Nearby, someone had dropped a blueprint of the entire bunker, someone who had inside knowledge, someone who could sneak in and out undetected. They handed the map to police, but suspicions grew. Could the thief still be inside? They searched thoroughly and found no one. Still, they weren't convinced. The next morning, Carl returned early and found several security traps had been triggered, but again, no sign of forced entry. The realization hit hard. The thief was using secret entrances, maybe ones even the family didn't know about. Despite the police investigation, Flint insisted they handle it themselves. "We know this place better than anyone, it did," he said. Against her better judgment, Lindsay agreed. They hatched a plan, one that would put them face to face with the person behind it all. That night they stayed behind after closing hours. Armed with flashlights, walkie-talkies, and a firm resolve, Lindsay, Flint, and Carl spread out across the bunker, each one positioned near the most valuable and vulnerable artifacts. The cold silence of the underground corridors felt heavier than ever. Every creak, every shuffle of a shoe echoed like thunder in the stillness. Hours passed, the air grew stale, and their eyelids heavy. But just as Lindsay's head started to nod, a soft noise snapped her wide awake. A faint shuffle, slow and deliberate. She whispered into the walkie-talkie, "Someone's here." Carl and Flint responded instantly, lights sweeping the corridors from their hiding spots. Lindsay held her breath as a shadow emerged from the far end of the hallway. The figure moved carefully, almost like they knew where every creak in the floor was. Then Flint's beam landed on the intruder's face, and all three of them froze. It was Adam, not a stranger, not some mysterious outside thief. Adam was one of the original excavation team members who had helped them uncover the very bunker he was now stealing from. "Adam?" Lindsay asked, stunned. "Why would you do this?" Caught in the beam, Adam looked like a ghost. He didn't run. Instead, he slumped to the floor, hands shaking. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone, Siwanbon," he said quietly. "I lost my job. I couldn't pay rent. I thought, just a few pieces. No one would notice." Carl clenched his fists, anger flaring. But Lindsay stepped forward. "You could have asked us for help." Adam looked down, ashamed. "I didn't think you would." In a strange twist of compassion, the trio decided not to press charges. Instead, they gave Adam a choice: return every stolen item and make it right. To their surprise, he agreed. Over the next week, Adam helped them recover every single piece. And then something unexpected happened. They offered him a job. Who better to explain the bunker's secrets to guests than someone who knew its hidden passages, its forgotten history? With hesitation, but gratitude, Adam accepted. Months later, the museum not only reopened but flourished. Visitor numbers doubled. Adam proved to be a captivating guide, weaving personal anecdotes with historical facts. The trio installed advanced security, reinforced the structure, and even created a digital archive.